The moment the doors opened, time stopped. 200 guests turned as one, watching a man in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit walk down the aisle like he owned the room. Claire's hand froze on the microphone, her cruel joke about Harper dying alone with cats still hanging in the air. Because the man walking toward them wasn't just handsome. He was the kind of handsome that made people whisper, and he was walking straight toward Harper, the sister Claire had just called tragically single, with a look in his eyes that said everything was about to change. Harper Matthews had spent 27 years being compared to her older sister, and found lacking every single time. But today, at Claire's perfect wedding, in front of everyone who'd ever pitied her, Harper was about to teach them all a lesson about assumptions. Sometimes the quietest people are hiding the loudest secrets, and Harper's secret was 6 feet tall, brilliant, and about to make an entrance no one would ever forget. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, you're going to love this story. And if you want more stories about people who get the last word in the most satisfying ways possible, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, this channel is full of moments where the disappointing sibling becomes the main character. Let's dive in. The invitation had arrived 3 months ago. Thick cream cardstock with gold embossing that screamed expensive. Claire Matthews and Jonathan Pierce request the pleasure of your company. Harper had stared at it for a long time, feeling that familiar knot in her stomach. Another family event, where she'd be the cautionary tale, the example of what happens when you don't settle down in time. Her mother had called the next day. You got the invitation? Claire's so excited. She wants you to be a bridesmaid. Of course. Of course. Not because Claire wanted her sister by her side, but because not having Harper in the wedding party would look bad. I'll be there, Mom, Harper had said. But I'll pass on being a bridesmaid. I'll just attend as a guest. The silence on the other end was loaded. Harper, don't be difficult. This is Claire's special day. Can't you just do this for her? That was always the refrain. Can't you just do this for Claire? Can't you just let her have this moment? Can't you just be less? You? Harper had held firm. Guest only. Take it or leave it. Claire had taken it, but not gracefully. Fine, she'd texted later. But don't blame me if people ask why my own sister isn't standing up for me. The months leading up to the wedding were a masterclass in subtle cruelty. Family dinners where Claire discussed her dress, her flowers, her perfect fiancé Jonathan, the corporate lawyer with the trust fund and the family estate. And always, the pointed comments about Harper. It's so nice that Harper can just focus on her career, Claire would say, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Some people are just meant to be married to their work, you know. Harper would smile, swallow the hurt, and say nothing. Because what could she say? That she'd been in a relationship for 2 years? That she was engaged? That her fiancé was a renowned cardiac surgeon who'd just been featured in a medical journal for pioneering a new procedure? She could have said all of that. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the years of being second best. Maybe it was knowing that anything she said would be minimized, turned into something lesser. Or maybe, just maybe, Harper was waiting for the perfect moment. That moment came on a Saturday in early October at the Riverside Estate, a sprawling venue with gardens that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale. Harper arrived alone, wearing a deep sapphire dress that hugged her curves and made her dark hair look almost black. She'd chosen it carefully, wanting to look beautiful but not too beautiful. Not enough to draw attention away from the bride. That was always the rule, wasn't it? Don't outshine Claire. The ceremony was traditional and elegant. Claire looked stunning in a lace gown that probably cost more than Harper's car. Jonathan looked appropriately handsome and appropriately wealthy. Harper sat in the 3rd row, between Aunt Linda and a cousin she barely knew, and watched her sister marry a man who'd proposed on a yacht. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Harper clapped along with everyone else and told herself the ache in her chest was just indigestion. The reception was held in a grand ballroom with crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. Harper found her assigned seat at table 7, far from the head table but close enough to hear everything. She was seated with distant relatives and family friends who barely knew her name. "You're the sister, right?" asked an elderly woman in purple. "The one who's not married yet?" "That's me," Harper said with a practiced smile, "the spinster of the family." The woman laughed, not realizing Harper wasn't entirely joking. Dinner was served with the usual fanfare. Speeches began. Jonathan's best man told stories about college pranks and bachelor parties. Claire's maid of honor, her best friend since high school, talked about how Claire had always known what she wanted and always gotten it. That got a big laugh. Harper pushed her salmon around her plate and wondered how much longer she had to stay before leaving would be socially acceptable. Then Claire stood, champagne glass in hand, her face flushed with happiness and alcohol. "I want to say a few words," she announced, her voice carrying across the room. Everyone quieted, turning toward the head table. Harper's stomach sank. She knew that look on Claire's face. That was Claire's, "I'm going to say something inappropriate and call it love" look. "First, I want to thank everyone for being here. Jonathan and I are so blessed to be surrounded by people who love us." Applause, smiles. Claire continued, her voice taking on a confessional tone. "You know, growing up with a sister wasn't always easy." Harper's hands clenched under the table. "Harper and I are so different. She's always been the serious one, the career-focused one, and I've always been the hopeless romantic." More laughter. Harper's face burned. "But you know what I've learned?" Claire raised her glass higher. "I've learned that everyone's path is different. Some of us find our person early." She gazed adoringly at Jonathan. "And some of us. Well, some of us are still looking." The room went uncomfortable. People shifted in their seats. Harper stared at her plate, willing herself to disappear. "My little sister Harper is 27 and still single," Claire announced, as if it were a diagnosis. "And that's okay. I mean, she's got her job as a flight attendant. She's traveling the world, living her best life." The way she said flight attendant made it sound like a failure. "I just want Harper to know that there's someone out there for everyone, even if it takes a little longer for some of us." Harper's vision blurred. The room was staring at her now, some with pity, some with curiosity. Aunt Linda patted her hand. "Don't worry, dear. You're still young." Claire wasn't done. "So here's to Harper, my baby sister. May she find what I found, someday, even if she has to wait a while longer." She raised her glass. "To Harper, still single but not giving up." The room erupted in awkward laughter and reluctant applause. Harper sat frozen, her heart pounding, tears threatening to spill. This was it. This was the moment Claire had orchestrated, the public humiliation disguised as sisterly love. And then, just as Harper was about to stand and leave, to walk out and never look back, the double doors at the back of the ballroom opened. Every head turned. The laughter died. Because standing in the doorway, backlit by the hallway lights like something out of a movie, was a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Tall, at least 6'3", with dark hair styled perfectly, strong jaw, broad shoulders, and a charcoal suit that was definitely custom-made. He scanned the room with intense hazel eyes until they landed on Harper. And then he smiled. Not a polite smile, not a stranger's smile, but the kind of smile that said, "I know you, I love you, and I'm about to change everything." He started walking, his long strides eating up the distance between the door and table 7. The room was dead silent now. 200 people watching this stranger move through the ballroom like he had every right to be there. Claire's mouth was open, her champagne glass still raised mid-toast. Jonathan looked confused. Harper's mother had her hand pressed to her chest. And Harper? Harper felt something crack open inside her, something that had been tightly controlled for too long, because she knew that walk, knew that suit, knew exactly who was about to reach her table and turn her sister's perfect day completely upside down. The man reached Harper's chair and, without hesitation, leaned down and kissed her. Not a peck, a real kiss. The kind that said this wasn't their first, or their 100th. When he pulled back, he kept his hand on her shoulder, his voice low enough that only their table could hear it first. "I'm so sorry I'm late, sweetheart. The surgery ran longer than expected." Then he straightened, turned to face the room, and his voice carried across the silent ballroom. "Hi, everyone. I'm Ethan, Harper's fiancé. If you've ever wanted to see someone's smug smile completely wiped off their face, drop the word speechless in the comments right now. And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because what happens next is absolutely going to make your day. This is the kind of satisfying turn that you'll want to watch again and again." The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 5 seconds. Ethan stood beside Harper, his hand still resting protectively on her shoulder, his presence commanding every eye in the room. Harper looked up at him, her eyes wide, a mixture of shock and relief flooding her face. She hadn't expected this, hadn't planned for him to show up, to reveal himself like this. But Ethan had always had impeccable timing. Claire found her voice first, though it came out strangled. "Fiancé. What fiancé?" Ethan turned toward the head table with a polite smile, the kind doctors use when delivering news to families. Professional, warm, but absolutely certain. "Ethan Morrison," he said, extending his hand toward Jonathan, even though he was too far away to actually shake it. "Cardiac surgeon at Mount Sinai. Harper and I have been together for 2 years, engaged for 3 months now." Harper's mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Harper, what is he talking about?" Harper stood too, and Ethan's arm slid around her waist, steadying her, supporting her. She took a breath and found her voice, stronger than she'd expected. "Mom, everyone, this is Ethan, my fiancé. We met 2 years ago on a flight to London. I was working. He was heading to a medical conference." 2 years? Claire's voice rose, sharp with disbelief. "You've been with someone for 2 years and never said anything?" "I tried to tell you," Harper said, and there was steel in her voice now. "Multiple times. But every time I tried to talk about my life, about my relationship, someone changed the subject, or made a joke, or told me I was too focused on work to have time for love." Ethan's thumb traced a small circle on Harper's hip, a gesture so intimate and familiar that it was clear to everyone watching. This wasn't new, wasn't fake. "Harper didn't want to share our relationship with people who wouldn't value it," he said simply. "And honestly, after hearing that toast just now, I understand why." The rebuke was gentle but devastating. Claire's face went from pale to red. "You crashed my wedding to make some kind of point?" "I didn't crash anything," Ethan replied calmly. "I was invited. Harper's name was on the invitation, and significant others were included. I couldn't make the ceremony because I was in surgery, but I made it in time for the reception." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of Harper's relatives. "Though if I'd known Harper was going to be humiliated in front of 200 people, I might have skipped the surgery." "I wasn't humiliating her," Claire protested, but her voice wavered. It was a joke, a toast." "Was it?" Harper asked quietly. The question hung in the air, because everyone in that room knew it wasn't. It was what Claire always did, wrapped cruelty in sweetness, and called it love. Harper's father stood now, his face red. Whether from anger or embarrassment, it was hard to tell. "Harper, this is highly inappropriate. This is your sister's wedding day." And she used it to announce to everyone that I'm a lonely spinster who'll probably die alone. Harper shot back. Was that appropriate, Dad? Ethan cleared his throat, drawing attention back to himself. If I may, I'd like to say something. He didn't wait for permission. He simply pulled out his phone, swiped through it, and held up the screen. This is Harper and me in Paris last spring. We spent a week there after I spoke at a cardiology conference. He swiped again. This is us in Tokyo. Harper had a layover, so I flew out to meet her for 3 days. Another swipe. This is us at my parents' house in Connecticut last Christmas. They adore her, by the way. My mom says Harper's the daughter she never had. Each photo was a revelation, proof of a life Harper had been living entirely separate from her family. A full, rich, love-filled life they knew nothing about. Claire was gripping the edge of the table now, her perfect wedding reception spiraling out of her control. Why? She asked, and for the first time, she sounded less angry and more genuinely confused. Why keep it a secret? Why not tell us? Harper looked at her sister, really looked at her. Because every time I had something good in my life, you made it small. When I got promoted to purser, you said it was just because the airline needed to fill quotas. When I bought my condo, you said it was tiny. When I told you I was happy, you said I was settling. That's not. I never. But Claire's protest died because they both knew it was true. Harper continued, her voice steady now, years of silence breaking like a dam. I didn't tell you about Ethan because I wanted one thing. Just one thing. That was mine. That you couldn't diminish or mock or turn into a competition. She felt Ethan squeeze her waist gently, giving her strength. And tonight, when you stood up there and told everyone I was tragically single, that I was still looking, that I might never find what you found, I realized something. What? Claire whispered. That I don't owe you explanations. I don't owe you access to my life. And I definitely don't owe you the satisfaction of thinking you're better than me. The room was transfixed, like watching a play unfold. Aunt Linda had tears in her eyes. Jonathan looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Harper's mother had sunk back into her chair, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Ethan, sensing the moment had reached its peak, gently turned Harper toward him. Are you ready to go? He asked softly, just for her. Harper nodded. She was more than ready. They started to walk toward the exit, hand in hand. But before they reached the doors, Harper turned back. Claire, I hope you have a beautiful marriage. I hope Jonathan makes you as happy as Ethan makes me. But I won't be attending any more family events where I'm treated like a punchline. When you're ready to know me as a person, not a comparison, you know where to find me. She didn't wait for a response. She and Ethan walked out of the ballroom, leaving behind a room full of stunned guests and a bride whose perfect day had just been completely overshadowed. Outside, in the cool October air, Harper finally let out the breath she'd been holding. Ethan pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. You okay? He asked. She laughed, slightly hysterical but also relieved. I can't believe you did that. You asked me not to come to the ceremony, he reminded her. You said it would be easier to deal with your family alone, but when you texted me during dinner saying Claire was making digs, I knew I had to be here. Harper pulled back to look at him. She had texted him, a quick message. She's doing it again, making me feel small. She hadn't expected him to actually show up. The surgery? She asked. Finished an hour ago. I had time to go home, change, and get here. Just barely. They walked to the parking lot where Ethan's car, a sleek black Audi, was waiting. As they drove away from the Riverside estate, Harper watched the lights fade in the rearview mirror. Inside, her family was probably in chaos. Claire crying, their mother trying to smooth things over, relatives gossiping about the drama. And for the first time in her life, Harper didn't care. She had Ethan. She had her career, She had a life full of love and adventure and possibilities, and she'd finally stood up for herself. The days following the wedding were predictably dramatic. Harper's phone exploded with messages. Her mother called 17 times before Harper finally answered. "How could you embarrass your sister like that?" Patricia had demanded. She was devastated. "It's her wedding, Harper. Her one special day." Harper had listened quietly, then responded, "Mom, she told 200 people I was going to die alone. In what world is that okay? She was just joking, you know how Claire is." "Yes," Harper said softly. "I do know how Claire is. And that's exactly why I didn't tell any of you about Ethan." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Patricia spoke, her voice smaller. "Are you really engaged?" "Yes, Mom. 3 months ago. He proposed on a beach in Santorini. It was beautiful. I would have told you, but I knew what would happen." "What would happen?" Patricia sounded genuinely confused. "Claire would find a way to make it about her, or she'd pick apart my choice. Or she'd compare her engagement to mine and make sure everyone knew hers was better." Harper felt tears prick her eyes. "For once in my life, I wanted something that was just mine. Something perfect that no one could ruin. Is that so wrong?" Her mother didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was thick with emotion. I didn't realize we made you feel that way. I've been telling you for years, Mom. You just weren't listening." They'd talked for another hour, a real conversation for the first time in Harper could remember. Patricia admitted she'd favored Claire, had been easier on her, had held Harper to different standards. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was acknowledgement. And for Harper, that was enough. For now. Claire, on the other hand, didn't call, didn't text. For 2 weeks, Harper heard nothing from her sister. Then, late on a Tuesday night, a message came through. "I'm sorry." Just 2 words. Harper stared at them for a long time. Ethan was beside her on the couch, reading a medical journal. "It's from Claire," she said. He glanced over. "How do you feel?" "I don't know," Harper admitted. "Part of me wants to accept it. Part of me thinks 2 words isn't enough for 27 years of being made to feel less than." "So don't respond yet," Ethan suggested. "Give it time. She'll either prove she means it or she won't." He was right. Harper set her phone aside and curled into his side, feeling his warmth, his steadiness. This was what she'd chosen to protect. This relationship, this love, this person who saw her for exactly who she was and never asked her to be smaller. 3 months later, Harper and Ethan sent out their own wedding invitations. Simple, elegant, with a guest list of 80 people, friends who'd supported them, Ethan's family who'd welcomed Harper with open arms, and a select few of Harper's relatives. Her parents were invited. Claire was not. "Are you sure?" Patricia had asked when she received her invitation. "She's your sister." "She's my sister who hasn't apologized for anything beyond those 2 words, Harper replied. "She hasn't called to really talk. Hasn't acknowledged what she did. Just, 'I'm sorry,' like that erases years of cruelty." "She's struggling," Patricia said. "The wedding wasn't the same after you left. People kept talking about you and Ethan instead of celebrating Claire and Jonathan. She felt upstaged." Harper laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Good. Maybe now she knows what it feels like." In April, on a perfect spring day, Harper Matthews became Harper Morrison. The ceremony was intimate, held in a botanical garden with flowers blooming in every color imaginable. Ethan's vows made her cry. Her vows made him tear up. And when they kissed as husband and wife, Harper felt complete in a way she never had before. At the reception, held in a restored Victorian mansion, Harper's father approached her during dinner. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," Martin said, and there was something different in his voice. Regret, maybe. Thank you, Dad. He cleared his throat. I owe you an apology. I didn't see how we treated you differently than Claire. I thought we were being fair, but we weren't. You deserved better from us. Harper's eyes filled with tears. Thank you for saying that. This Ethan, her father continued, glancing over at where Ethan was laughing with his groomsmen. He's a good man. You chose well. I did. Harper agreed. And I almost didn't get to have this because I was so busy trying to make all of you see me. Martin nodded slowly. We see you now. I just hope it's not too late. It wasn't too late. Not quite. But it was different now. Harper had drawn boundaries, had claimed her space, had refused to be small anymore. And her family, slowly, was learning to accept the daughter and sister they'd overlooked for so long. Late that night, as Harper and Ethan danced their first dance as husband and wife, she spotted her mother crying in the corner. Happy tears this time. Real ones. And Harper realized something profound. She didn't need her family's approval anymore. She had it, finally, but she didn't need it. She had Ethan. She had herself, and that was more than enough. 6 months after their wedding, Harper received a letter. Not a text, not an email, but an actual handwritten letter. From Claire. It was 5 pages long, filled with apologies and explanations and tears that had smudged the ink in places. Claire wrote about her jealousy, about how Harper had always seemed so independent, so capable, so unbothered by others' opinions. She wrote about how threatened she'd felt when Harper built a life that didn't revolve around family approval. And she wrote about the wedding, about how she'd realized too late that her toast had been cruel, that she'd hurt Harper in a way that couldn't be easily undone. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, Claire wrote in closing. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I want you to know that I see it now. I see how I treated you. And I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Not because Mom told me to apologize, but because I miss my sister. And I don't know if I deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway. Harper read the letter 3 times, sitting at her kitchen table with tears streaming down her face. Ethan found her there and read it over her shoulder. What do you want to do? He asked. Harper folded the letter carefully, put it back in its envelope. I want to think about it, she said. I want to see if she means it. Words are easy. Change is hard. Ethan kissed her temple. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. And that, Harper realized, was the difference. With Ethan, she was always enough. Always seen. Always valued. She didn't need to earn his love or prove her worth. She just was. That was the gift he'd given her that day at Claire's wedding. Not just his presence, but the courage to believe she deserved better. Today, Harper and Claire are slowly rebuilding their relationship. It's not perfect. There are still moments of tension, old patterns that try to resurface. But Claire is trying, genuinely trying, to be a better sister. And Harper is learning to trust again, cautiously, with boundaries in place. They have lunch once a month. They text occasionally. It's not the close sisterhood some siblings have, but it's honest. And for Harper, honesty is worth more than proximity. As for that night at Claire's wedding, when the doors opened and everything changed, Harper looks back on it now with a mixture of emotions. Satisfaction, yes. Relief, definitely. But also sadness for all the years she spent trying to fit into a family that couldn't see her. Ethan tells her sometimes that he wishes he'd known her sooner, wishes he could have saved her from those years of feeling invisible. But Harper disagrees. I needed those years, she says. They taught me who I am. They showed me what I deserve. And they led me to you. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic or explosive. It's just living well, being loved, and refusing to shrink anymore. Harper learned that the hard way, but she learned it. And every time she looks at her wedding ring, she's reminded that the right people will see you. The right people will celebrate you. The right people will walk through doors at exactly the right moment and change everything. If this story hit home for you, drop a comment below. Have you ever had a moment where you finally showed your family who you really are? How did it feel? And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This channel is full of stories about people who stopped hiding, stopped shrinking, and started owning their truth. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Because everyone deserves to be seen for who they really are, not who others assume them to be.